So now, to open this two-day conference, I would like to welcome to the stage Jan-Kees Schakel and Sonja van Neerbeek of Nature First.
Dear guests, thanks for joining. Knowing many of you, I know that all of you also are acutely aware that the natural world is in a big crisis. And biodiversity is collapsing, and there's a lot of people that are in despair. We have reasons of hope because we see a number of things that we can influence. In 2022, there were almost 200 countries that signed the 30-30-30 agreement. That meant that 30% of the land and 30% of the oceans need to have a protected status by 2030. And then next year, there will be in Europe the Restoration Act. It will ask people, actually governments, to have a restoration plan to say what they are going to do to make it happen. A lot of work that's coming up. Another trend which is very important in this phase where we are is that in about 1990, Finland introduced a carbon tax. Organizations, factories, companies have to pay a carbon tax for the pollution they create. And that is actually globally spreading, but often very locally impacting and a lot of impact on nature as well. So this now, in this year, 2024, there was a revenue on the carbon tax of 800 billion. And in 2030, that's expected to be $3 trillion. A lot of money that can be used for restoration of nature. So when Nature First started, we set ourselves the challenge to help organizations with boots on the ground, protected area managers, policymakers, to give them the tools to think about what they are going to do and to prove what they are doing. Because there is a lot of money, but there are creditors that will ask you, is this true? Are you really making an impact? And how do you do that? So the vision of Nature First, and you will see lots of demonstrations in the next 2 days, is that we require data-driven approaches to become not only responsive, but also proactive in nature conservation and help the people in the field to make it happen. There will be lots of workshops. I've seen people sweating and crying and struggling with making it all fantastic. You will see it, you will experience it, and I hope you will enjoy those 2 days.
I'm sweating. You as well? It's very hot in here. But I only want to welcome you all on behalf of our 3 organizations. We have the executive organizations of this project, Sensing Clues, Space, and the Sustainable Scale-Up Foundation. And you'll see me hosting some panels this afternoon and tomorrow morning. And for the rest, I wish, you'll be all very inspired the next coming days. So welcome to you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonja and Jan-Kees. Now, we are in this very special location. So next, I would like to welcome to the stage José Kok, Chair of the Board at Ouwehands Zoo Foundation, member of the board of the Black Vulture Conservation Foundation and Globe Guards, biologist at Ouwehands Zoo, EASA Brown Bear EEP coordinator, and member of the IUCN SSC Brown Bear Specialist Group. That was just one person. And Ingrid Vermeulen, Director of Bears in Mind, a Dutch foundation dedicated to the protection of bears. Ingrid leads the efforts to improve the welfare of bears in need. Based in the Netherlands, the organization supports and initiates bear conservation and wildlife projects across the globe, focusing on both rescue and, of course, long-term protection. The floor is yours.
Yeah. We as a host want to welcome you here in this beautiful location. Sorry. And we are delighted to host through us as 2 organizations.
This for the destination?
No, it's just one. Yeah. 2 small organizations, although small in size, based in the Netherlands, but with a big global impact, to welcome you. And we are excited to explore
the insights and the collaborations and the shared commitment to putting nature first. So we want to welcome you and we hope you enjoy this beautiful 2 days.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. We were told that we only have 1 minute, and I think we are almost there. So I hope this is the intense minute of your 2-day visit here. Very welcome. And I'm looking forward to hear your presentations, to talk to many people and see the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done. Okay, so in Nature First, we have several partners, about 12 partners. All of them are here apart from one. Sorry, I always get emotional for this. So we have partners, WWF Ukraine, and throughout the project, they have been working really hard for conservation in their country, which, as we all know, is under aggression from Russia. And so we have online only here, WWF Ukraine today, Roman Cherepanyn, who will say a few welcome words on behalf of them.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much. I hope you hear me. Dear colleagues, thank you for invitation to the conference opening session. As Linda said, my name is Roman Cherepanyn. I am project manager at WWF Ukraine, WWF Ukraine. We are the partner of Nature First project from Ukrainian side. My colleagues are also on Zoom now. I'm also work at Department of Biology and Ecology at University in Ukraine. If said generally, the focus of our Ukrainian team in WWF Ukraine is monitoring and conserving rare large carnivores, especially lynx and bear in our country, and also the bison in Ukraine. We work mainly in 2 biogeographical zones. It is the Carpathian and Polisia region, where we implement sustainable approaches for species and landscape management. Another focus of our work is the issue of coexistence between local communities, local people, and large carnivores in the Carpathian Mountains. We work to mitigate the human-wildlife conflicts in the mountain region of our country as well. Generally, it was a great honor for us and a great joy for us to work during these 3 years in such an innovative and important project as Nature First, whose tools and solutions enhance the conservation of rare biodiversity, contribute to the sustainable coexistence of humans and wildlife, and change attitudes towards large carnivores in Europe. The systematic, innovative, cross-sectoral approaches of the project and the involvement of various stakeholders, from scientific institutions to public organizations, from local communities to authorities, contributed to the high-quality implementation of the project ideas and activities as well at the national and international levels. So we are grateful for participating in this, and thanks to the technological solution of the project proposed and activities, we improved biodiversity monitoring in Ukraine, particularly large carnivores monitoring and human-wildlife coexistence, and contributed to positive changes in the nature conservation system of our country. Unfortunately, due to the Russian military aggressions, we were not able to meet physically and to come to the conference, or you to come to our country. But nevertheless, we would like to wish all of us during these 2 days of the work interesting presentation, fruitful discussions, ambitions, ideas of the coming years, and new project, of course, in the futures. We will be happy, of course, to continue our cooperation and our work with you in the future project. Thank you for the invitation and wish you all the best. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Roman. I hope you will stay and join us for the plenary sessions at least. As you know, they're live streamed through the Zoom, and hopefully you'll be able to stay and join with us. For now, I would like to call to the stage Fred Stolle. He's Director, Impact for Land and Carbon Lab, Global Forest Watch at the World Resources Institute, where he works since 2003. Fred is specialized in geospatial land cover and land use change assessments and its associated climate and ecosystem impacts, quantifying drivers and making data available and relevant for policy and decision makers. He is trained as a geographical information system and remote sensing specialist.
Thanks. Yeah. Sounds very impressive. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you here to be in Ouwehands Zoo. As you see the title of my talk, it has a very grand talk, strategies, but it's basically the failures and lessons learned over the time I've worked at the WRI and before that in other places about how to get data used, how to get conservation data used. And I think there's a lot to do, us scientists or us one who want to work on conservation. So you have to be aware, mind the gap. There is a difference what policy people want and what we deliver. And those things, if you don't mind that gap, then you maybe don't get your data used. Policy people want answers, they want it now, and they want it to be 100% sure. It's A or it's B. And we scientists are like, yeah, it's 80% A, 20% B. That's not what policy people want to hear. So in this next 20 minutes, and there's hell to pay if it's 21 minutes, so I'll stick to my 20 minutes. I'm gonna go about this. Think about how can we make that gap less. So, and that is all to think when your project starts, think about building bridges. Now, who we see the policy and who we see the scientist, I leave it up to you. But there is this little gap there, and that gap is what is a big concern for all of us. If we don't think about how to get our data used, it's not getting used. And then why do we need our data? So we have to build bridges and we have to drag each other across. And so what I want to do here is talk about policy-ready data. And policy-ready data is not entirely the same as science data because you have to have your user in mind. You have to think about your user. What is your user? How they want to have it, when they want to have it. And so policy-ready data, you see all those beautiful quotes here. It has to think about translation. It has to think about how to get people together, do it together, and all the other beautiful things. So that's the scientist. That's the policy people. That's the bridge we need to cross. And it's not always easy. So policy-ready data. I'm not sure I'm going to all 8 here, but these are the things that I have in mind to think about what can you do to cross that bridge, to get over that divide. The first thing is, and I have done it myself, is the make it and they will come syndrome. It's a big syndrome that happens in many conservation areas. You build a beautiful toolbox that has all the different bells and whistles, and it all ends up in the graveyard. And I have made many data graveyards in my time. It was great data, but I didn't think about the users. I didn't think how they're going to use it with it. It had all the things that you can do, but nobody wanted it, or there were a few people wanted it, and it was great. Those 10 people used it and they loved it, but that's not how you can keep a tool or a data going. So you really have to think about that this make it and they will come hardly works. If you don't think about your users, you haven't worked with your people, you haven't talked to the users, it's often not gonna work. Very seldom. But when having said that, a few exceptions. Whoever wanted the telephone with a camera, we all have them now. So sometimes it does work. Sometimes you come up with crazy ideas and they do work. But have in mind that these people had $1 billion to spend on PR. So maybe that did help. But I do want to say, don't make it and they will come, hardly will work, but also don't get scared if you think you have an awesome idea that really needs to be pushed forward. Go for it. So the second point I have here, synthesis and simplify. And again, what I said before, policy people don't want to hear a lot of complications. They want more answers which are a bit more black and white than we like to give. but we have to think about it. So I often use this quote of E.O. Wilson, the late E.O. Wilson, and I think he makes, it's a great quote, but a few important points that we have to synthesize right information at the right time. And again, that's important, at the right time. If policy person comes to us and said, I need to have deforestation numbers, and then said, okay, let me do a study for 7 years and I come back in year 10, likely 10 years too late. And then the last part, like, choose wisely. That is the idea that we give it to the policy people and the people who do the work. They choose wisely when they see what happens in the world. I doubt they choose wisely, but again, that's our task. We deliver the best information to them in a way that they can use it. As an example, on policy-ready data, I show you FAO data. FAO was one of the organizations that since 1946 and 48 started collecting data about agriculture, about forestry. They were one of the first to think about if you can't have data, if you cannot manage it. And I think that was it's one of the ideas that I think really resonates with me. But then if you think about the policy-ready data, so every 5 years, they publish a book. The data is then at least 10 years old and is published in these tables. Is that policy-ready data if you want to stop deforestation? Maybe not. Now, this is not an attack on FAO. FAO does a lot of other things and they have changed this. But the idea is like, this is not policy-ready data, but this data, satellite data, every time you see a week 1, week 2, week 3, you see an illegal logging road happening here live. You see the deforestation around the river happening in 4 weeks. This is in a conservation area in Peru. If you want to stop deforestation, this is the data you need. That is the right data for the right information, so the policy data. And so have you this information? That's already a big step forward than those tables. This is information at the right time, at the right information. And now you have to get it to the right people. Here you see in Wageningen University done radar alerts in Congo. Same idea. Every week, this information comes in. This is one of the most viewed information on our website, is the weekly alerts, because this is what NGOs, local people, guards can do something with. They can say, hey, there's something happening, I go there. So this is right information at the right time. And so this is what we as scientists have to think about. Sometimes we are too late. This radar alerts is not 100% right. It's an alert. They may say there's something, but we're not sure. But it works. It is good enough for the tool that it needs to be used for. I'll skip this one. We just talked, you heard Jan-Kees talking about the Global Biodiversity Framework. A great effort. Everybody wants to do it. 257 indicators. Synthesize and simplify. I don't think any policy person is interested in 256 indicators. How are we going to do it? I don't know, but I don't think this will ever be implemented as a policy. Now, if you said you have to bring it to the users, this is our GFW platform. It is as simple as Google Maps. Everybody can use it. You can go at your area, zoom in, see the deforestation happening. When you synthesize and simplify, you have to bring it to the people in a way that they can use it and can make any use of it. Let me see how far I am. Still 10 minutes. Okay, reliability and neutrality. If you develop data or develop a system to get people that they can use data for conservation and information, can you make it work over the long term? And this is very difficult for all of us who work in conservation, NGOs, science groups, because we're not working on long time. We have often project scales, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But if you want people to rely on your data, you need to be there for a long time. Now, this comes again from GFW. We started in 2014. And so for the last 10 years, every year, we looked at deforestation around the world, how much deforestation is happening. And so people starting to rely on it. The first few years was like, yeah, you are just an NGO, this data will disappear. But you had to put a lot of efforts in our websites, in making this happen every year again, and that's an enormous effort. We have for 10 years, we have now 9 million users. And that's okay, still not as we hoped that would be. But just to keep that website and keep that information going, we spent $1 million just to have that information going every year. And that is not anything extra, just the website, making sure the information is there, distributed, $1 million every year. That is very difficult to fundraise for, but it managed until now. There's something else, and that's neutrality. Data and methods and science have to be neutral, have to be right and scientific. But a goal, we had a goal as GFW. We want to make information to stop deforestation. And so deforestation has a connotation, has a definition. You see the definition there. And that is not what GFW is going to deliver, and that we don't deliver. We deliver forest loss. And that means like there's a tree and it's gone. We say there's something happening there. Why we don't use the deforestation? A lot of people want us to do that. Because deforestation has a definition. See a few pictures. Is picture A a forest? No, it's not a forest, because there's agriculture. When there's agriculture, even if there's trees, not a forest. Number B, a forest. Yes, it's a forest. Plantations are forest. C, I guess you all know it's a forest. D, forest. E, forest. Probably yes, because I had unstocked forest. This is why Canada has no deforestation, because the trees in the boreal area will grow back in 80 years. So did we want to play that game? Did we want to say like, oh, we only look at deforestation? They said, no, we are not neutral. We are an environmental organization. We want to show all forest loss. And so we didn't want to play the games that countries play on definitions. And so here you see in the next picture, just a change of definition, what it does to the forest. So 90% cover, this is forest, this is 70% cover is forest. Just by changing the definition, it's a total number of forest is different and your deforestation is different. So to say we didn't want to be neutral, because you can play with the definition and you don't have deforestation. So what I want to say, your scientific methods should be science, should be ready, but your data delivers for action. And that doesn't have to be neutral in mind. You have a use and a user in mind. We have users with NGOs and government who really want to stop deforestation. So users, as I said, you have to have the users in mind. Users are very diverse, and we have made many mistakes. Sometimes our user group was too small, sometimes too big. Sometimes we want to please everybody and we please nobody. With this data you just saw on deforestation, because we don't do deforestation with tree cover loss, many countries don't like our data, because the forest loss is much higher than what they report on deforestation. But we say, so be it. We think it's important. Here, another mistake that we made. So as I said, it's $1 million a year to keep Global Forest Watch up like it is. But he said, no, we have lots of users only interested in fire. We have other users only interested in climate. So we made all kind of small sites selections and sites, and it ballooned to an enormous amount of money. We could not afford this. And the users were so specific that it wasn't useful anymore. So they all died. And we did something very different. We found out that many users want our data and do something with them themselves. They wanted to connect it with their data. They want to do something else. And so from these, the forest atlases start in many areas. They're basically the API in our data and then do themselves whatever they want. Sometimes we don't like what they do with our data, but that's up to them. So you have to give the data open and out to people, and they do with data whatever they do with data. It was a big step for us, because some people just want the data direct from Global Forest Watch, want to see how much deforestation is, sometimes want to do a lot of extra work. It's up to them, and you have to let the data go. well, this is one slide. I guess you all get it. You know, should I go to Papua New Guinea and tell them they have too much deforestation? Maybe I'm not the right person, and you need to have intermediates. You have to think about who you influence and where your influence is. One of my last slides. Conservation has impacts. Again, as I said, there's always a gap between policy and our data. There's always a gap between conservation and economic gain, or very often. We all want to be here. Good for people, good for environment. We don't want to be here, but we usually are somewhere here. Not bad for people, but we're trying to move that. But there's always consequences for people. You have a protected areas. People cannot go to the areas to collect bees or harvest a few trees for making their houses. So there is impact, and we shouldn't forget that whatever we think is conservation, good for climate, has a local impact we should think about. Things that went wrong when you think about local impact. I'll skip this. I guess you all know this African proverb: if you go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a lot of people. I don't subscribe to this proverb. You can sometimes have such a big coalition of people with such heavy governance structure that you actually don't go fast anymore, you go nowhere. So think about that. If you make a coalition, that this is a great proverb, reality might be different. Come back to this slide. Think about evaluation. So this is the latest 2004 deforestation that came out last month that we published. The biggest deforestation since 2000 that we started to measure was last year. More fires, Bolivia, more than 4 million hectares completely deforested. Bolivia, a country where nothing normally happens. Republic of Congo, biggest deforestation ever, another country where nothing usually happens. So as GFW, have we done a good job? Obviously not. Deforestation is getting worse and worse. So what does that mean for us? Are we superfluous? And I think with conservation, this is always an issue. We are going against the grain. So how do we evaluate ourselves? So we did an evaluation. We did look at all the areas that we have very close connection with NGOs and are monitored. Luckily, we found good connection. Whenever there's good monitoring, there is a decrease in deforestation. But overall, when we came out with the data, really our analysts, we are with like 30 people making the data, and we were devastated because apparently we didn't make a dent. Some area mitigation, it's still going bad. So think about how you want to evaluate yourself when you do your conservation. And because Linda is looking, there's the last slide. This is the last slide, but my whole message here was build bridges. That's it.
Thank you so much, Fred. We actually have some time for questions. So while you think if you have any questions, is there anyone who can support with questions? Because I need to take this table off. Oh, it's quite heavy. Because I want for the panel. Yeah, no. Otherwise, it's in the way. Otherwise, it blocks the view for the panel members. Are there any questions for Fred at the moment? Greg, you can have the catch box. It will work. I'm sure it will work. Oh, yeah.
If I throw it to you, will you catch it?
Yeah.
Obviously, the last year is quite a depressing statistic. Have you got any nice stories? Any success stories where data has made a difference? Any positives to follow?
Yes. 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 Yes, and I didn't show them because this was the shock on our part. But yes, there are. You saw a bit coming by. We have many communities who use our data, have stopped deforestation. In the Philippines, a lot of indigenous community use our data, have gone to the government and shown that in their lands, their ancestral land, there's lots of less deforestation. They have very good at land titling, and that happened in Philippines. Mars, the one Mars bars, based in Arlington, Virginia, so we have a bit close cooperation. They use it for the cacao. They use all the data information. They have reduced deforestation. They pay more to cacao farmers. So data was also really data driven. You saw quickly coming by a paper of Walmart and Unilever. They use a lot of our data, and actually the alert data, to look if there's any fire or any deforestation in their plantations. They directly go there and look what it is. And sometimes it's false alerts, sometimes it's real alerts. In Uganda, my colleague Gladys will talk tomorrow about it. There is, the gorillas, of course, are very important, give a lot of income to the country. They use the alerts, the data, because they send patrols every day and they need to go somewhere. So every day they download the alerts and get the patrols going to everywhere. This has reduced the deforestation and illegal use of those areas. So there are lots of examples of small wins and countries wins. I didn't show this, but so Brazil has an increase in deforestation. I said RRC, DRC. Indonesia, the last 10 years, a decrease in deforestation. Every year, still decreasing deforestation, a great win. So there are many wins, but that's not what I focused on today.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we have time for one or two more questions for Fred. Yeah. Someone have a question? No questions? Oh, then we're ahead of time. And in that case, thank you, Fred, for this inspiration, setting the scene, I think, also for the panel discussion and the rest of the 2 days. We will be diving deeper into all of these issues, local actions that are small, effective, grassroots, but we need big, bold, global to really see that change that we're looking for. And that will be the subject of the panel we're having now. So I would like to invite Niels Raes from Naturalis, who I saw earlier. Yes. Jan-Kees Schakel from Sensing Clues and Boris Hinojo from 3E Data. There are panel members today. We have set you up a nice, cozy set of chairs because we didn't want you to hit your head on the screen, which is not movable. So that's why I'm staying here, so I can kind of be eye level with you and ask the difficult questions. But first, in short introduction, Niels Raes is the program manager at Naturalis. He leads the recently started EU-funded Biodiversity Meets Data project, who are also with a booth in the Jungle restaurant, if you want to meet them later, Niels and his colleague. And this project will develop a single access portal to support biodiversity monitoring and assessing the state of nature. So this is what Fred was talking about earlier, in Natura 2000 sites. So this is very much an EU activity. And as I said before, they have a booth in the exhibition. Jan-Kees, of course, you met already before. He's the founder of Sensing Clues and scientific director of Nature First. Nature First is funded by the Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Program. And their mission, so Sensing Clues' mission, is to provide nature conservation organizations with best-in-class conservation technology solutions for protected area management. So we see a kind of a link there between the two. Boris Hinojo is the founder of private company 3E Data, very, very rare in, I think, the conservation world, private companies, and developer of the habitat change monitoring tool to assess conservation status of Natura 2000 sites. And Fred, of course, you already heard from. Now, before we start, we have a nice, diverse, large audience. So who in the audience is, I would say, based in the Netherlands, not necessarily nationality-wise from the Netherlands, but based in the Netherlands? Okay, so that's actually, so it's a good diversity. So the others are not based in the Netherlands. Who are you from biodiversity monitoring as your main activity? Okay, so a handful of people. From conservation, So like an NGO or working hands-on in the field. Okay. Human-wildlife conflict, which is one of the main topics we're addressing. Right. And wildlife crime, which of course is the other. Wildlife crimes. Okay, so I think we have a good representation of the whole, what we call the continuous spectrum, from monitoring all the way to wildlife crime prevention, which is what we've been trying to do. Now, untraditionally, I also wanted to start with any questions that you may already have. You may have looked at the program beforehand. You may have seen the profiles of these speakers and thought, ooh, if only I could ask this person this question. If so, raise your hand now. If not, we can still have questions afterwards. I do expect questions from the audience, not just from me. No questions right now? Okay. Then the title of the panel today is From Tools to Action, Scaling Conservation Solutions for Global Impact. And the reason for choosing this title is because we have seen in Nature First that working locally with people on the ground and using their expertise is absolutely essential. And this is also what Fred was alluding to. And yet we need solutions to be scalable. We need them to be implemented elsewhere, globally, regionally, to have the impact we're looking for, to really buck the trend we're in right now. And that's kind of the difficulty, what are the barriers there that we're trying to address in this panel. I wanted to give the word to each of the panel members first to kind of explain what have been their driver, their barrier, but also the opportunities maybe that they see. Boris, starting with you. Okay. You have the microphone.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you all. In our case, as Linda said, we are a small company. We are strange because we are in nature conservation, and it's not so usual to have this type of companies, but we are also an spin-off company from the university. We were working before founding it in the university. Our driving to create this company is try to use remote sensing applied to nature conservation. That was the work we were doing in the university. Focusing on habitat mapping and habitat monitoring, because we saw how we were working on these things with GIS and this process, and we want to improve this process, make this more affordable. We saw that it will be an opportunity because we always want to preserve and conserve nature, but it's always a mandatory thing by law. So all administrations in Europe need to monitor in habitats and species. So we think we can show them how to do this in proper way, automate this process with remote sensing, but also our approach is a bit different, using local knowledge from experts from the region. We cannot assume that we can map all over Europe, all over the world with our knowledge. We need the knowledge from the different regions for the people who knows about that. And this is the things that we try to do, and we are working on in Nature First. And that's the thing. From the technological point of view, we don't see so many barriers. There are some but challenges, but we can surpass them more or less. But the most complicated thing for us and creating a company is a process is sell things, go to the user who is willing to pay for your services, for your products, for your solution. And this part is more difficult in nature conservation because, for example, in Europe, you depend most on administrations. So you need to go through this all bureaucratic process, or the public tenders and these kind of things. And this is complicated thing to scale up this type of solutions. And this is something that I would like to say regarding our work and our barriers, because we can make a good work, we can compete in this process of public tender, but sometimes the administrations are not paying attention on these things because it's like there are no they are not willing to monitor every 6 years or every year in these kind of things. So you have some struggles to make them do these things because this is expensive. Also, they need to put money there, and this is another problem. And then generate these public tenders in this process to do that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think this is also what Fred mentioned, that we quite often dive into the solution, the technology, and then we have that working, and then we go like, yay, we open the doors now, and people will come. And then, yeah, then the struggle, at that point, really the struggle begins. And I think that has been one of the discussion also in preparation of this, that we have these projects, we have all these developments going, but then how do you implement them? And this is also something that Fred was talking about earlier. So Jan-Kees, you chose to be an NGO. So whereas Boris chose to be a private company, you have chosen to be an NGO. I understood this was also an area of discussion before you started, because an NGO and a company have different means of accessing funding. And of course, it has a particular image attached to it as well. You went the NGO route. What are your struggles there to really get it implemented?
Yeah, well, so our philosophy is we all wanted to be meaningful and contribute to nature conservation, and then structure follows purpose. So we found out, we started as a social enterprise, as a corporate, but we found in the field a lot of resistance because we are really helping boots on the ground organizations. Often they are quite small, and most of them are NGOs. And they felt a little bit like, I'm working with this commercial company because it's a company. And then we said, well, structure should follow the purpose. So why not convert it into an NGO? Because then that hesitation is gone, and we don't have to explain why we are a social enterprise, but still a BV in the Netherlands. So we turned it into a stichting, a foundation, non-profit, AMBI certified. And that gave us way more access to people in the field. One of our core principles within Sensecure, how we make things happen, how we fund things, is that we work not only with field partners, but also with what we call solution partners. And those are corporates. They have brilliant technologies like MarkLogic and Progress now, and Semantic Web, which is now GraphDB and Semantic Web. Those are technologies that are really very, very expensive and are not affordable for NGOs in the field. We found organizations that have 1,000 or 2,000 euros annually to spend on technology, and then they spend mostly on buying 4, 5, 6 camera traps, and that's it. So the really technology that is needed, that we saw is needed, can only be provided if we are innovative, and we would never get those technologies at a corporate. We would have to pay the subscriptions and the license fees. But as an NGO, they can give it to us, and they even have some tax reductions in giving it to us. They work with us, and they are inspired by using their technology, which is used in many different branches, from the police to the army to banks and insurance companies. But now the people can also contribute and work with us on projects that serve nature, that help protect elephants. And then people actually in these companies are inspired and like to help us making most of the technologies and convert the technology capabilities, let's say, which are inherently there, to solutions that are fit for purpose in the field. And we would never have been able to do that as a corporate. So it worked out for us well.
Yeah. So it goes to show that when you start out to really try and implement solutions in what we have started to call a market, because conservation is not seen as a market. You know, there are a lot of people who are very ideological to try and improve the world. And in Nature First, we deliberately started talking about a market because we did want to have that mindset of, yes, but if you want to have impact, you need to get your work, your solution out there. You need it used or bought by customers. Otherwise, it's just a novelty that goes nowhere. So approaching that market is something you can do in different ways. There isn't a right or wrong. Would you say, I don't know who this question would be aimed for, that we should have, in that case, still a more entrepreneurial mindset? Maybe, Niels, you can say something about this. You're from Naturalis, which is one of the world leading institutes, but how do you approach it then in your project with something like Biodiversity Meets Nature, where you still want to have that same impact?
Yes, we're definitely looking for impact, but we're not really having the entrepreneurial mindset. So this is a consortium that brings together all kinds of technologies developed in different research projects, and then try to scale that up to a policy level and make it available to Natura 2000 site managers across Europe. So we started very small, developing technologies and AI algorithm developments for automated identification of biodiversity. So data on biodiversity is general lacking. So there's a lack of data, and we have implemented the nature directives in Europe, and still biodiversity is declining, and we do not really know what's the cause. So the aim here was to develop tools and make these tools available for a larger audience, be it all the Natura 2000 site managers. So, and then focusing on implementing these technologies at a larger scale, and then bringing everything together in a centralized portal where you can actually find these tools, and then develop analysis tools together with the stakeholders like Boris and these Natura 2000 site managers, bringing in organizations like Eurosite, who is also available here, representing a large community of those managers, and make sure that the tools are fit for purpose. So I can, as a scientist, think of really nice scientific questions and answers, but that's often not what's needed on the ground. So that's where we try to build now an infrastructure that is fit for purpose for monitoring of biodiversity, and then making all the data that comes out of these tools fair. So it should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So with BMD, we're mobilizing all the biodiversity data to GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, to secure this data and make sure that we can also access it in our analysis tools. So that's a bit more the public mindset. So we're not relying on revenues or anything for our existence. The downside is that this is a project.
Yeah.
So, and this is a project that's funded for 4 years. So we're already looking now in how to embed these developments in European research infrastructures, the ERICs, the European Research Infrastructure Consortiums, to make sure that this single access portal will ultimately land in a secure place. And we also guarantee a 5-year maintenance after closure of the project.
Yeah.
So, but that's a concern. Yeah. So
No, definitely. Fred, any thoughts on it? Did you see a change in you were describing that there's a lot of money going into global forest watch. I mean, I think most people around the room here would go like, whoa, just give me a percentage of that and we'll be happy. Did you see a mind change in WRI?
Definitely, but we have anchor funders. We could do this, Norwegian oil, awesome. Norway is our big funder, and the Bezos Earth Foundation, who were together, and they were long-term funders, and that's why it's something we could do this. But still, they ask us also every time, you need to find private sector money, and that for a long time we tried, and we have actually a private sector GFW Pro, which is going for the private sector. But that data, you get some money for a subscription cost of $1,000. That's awesome, but that doesn't cover the cost at all. You don't come to $1 million with just $1,000 subscription. So we really came back to Norway and said, like, this is a public good. How else we can know what happens to the world if we don't do that? And I think in the end, we convinced Norwegian funders to say, like, okay, this is a public good. So we are willing to keep funding it in every time more limited amount. So we have to find different funders. But we thought also, like, and that's also where we try those different smaller GFWs, but maybe found specific needs who want to pay for it. We didn't find those groups to pay for it. And can I have a question to Jan-Kees while I have the mic?
Yeah, no, feel free.
You said you made from a company to an NGO type. I feel that often companies, Unilevers, Walmarts, rather deal with other companies than with NGOs. Do you feel the same? Do you feel you have less access? You have more, I completely agree, you have more access to local people, etc. Do you feel you have less access to those big companies as an NGO?
No, trust us from the start somehow, because we are purely mission driven and there's no hesitation. Is this greenwashing or whatever? So actually, I forgot it in my opening small speech, but we are now engaging with a few large corporates that are scaling, that are using the carbon funds to restoration projects across the world. And that those are companies. So those are also, as we wanted as a start, to be a social company. So they've got a corporate structure which is aimed at social benefit for all, but they have also shareholders, but they don't hesitate to work with us. And they believe in the quality. They believe in the quality of the people and the quality of the products that you deliver. And if they see that, and that's high end, then that works. So there is a misconception that corporates and NGOs, what I said, the structure is just a facility to make something happen. But we are just as commercially and just as business driven as any other company. Only our purpose and our benefits and our profits go into the team and into nature conservation again, not in the pockets of shareholders. So that is the big difference. But apart from that, we are running ourselves as a company because we have to pay the bills in the end of the month, and we don't have donors like Sweden or whatever. So all the organizations on the ground that work with us, they pay an affordable subscription fee, equity. And so if you can afford, what you can afford is what you pay. And then we help you to translate those often quite easy questions for us, but difficult questions for people in the field, to merge all these kinds of different data sources, to merge global forest watch with the other information they have, is often a bridge too far, as we say in the Netherlands. It's just outside their technological reach. They are a biologist, they are a manager of an area, they are preferably outside with cars and with guns and with people and protecting people and keeping the elephants out of the village. And then the technology should just work, but they should not dive into technology. And how can this technology help? You know, it just like your phone, it works. No complaints, no faults about that. And that's what we try to achieve. And we work with many of you together, and hopefully with Naturalis after today.
Yes, new partnerships being formed.
Absolutely.
If you have a question for each other, feel free to raise that as well. Or if you want to comment on something that one of the panel members have said.
Well, I can say something about the reliability of data that we generate. So Naturalis is indeed an expert institute on biodiversity, and the infrastructures and the tools that we're developing are now also noticed by the private sector companies. In Europe, private sector companies have to start reporting on their impacts and dependencies on biodiversity. So now all these tools we developed through these Horizon Europe funded mechanisms are now also scaled up, and we're looking into ways how to serve that purpose, to make sure if companies report on their impacts on biodiversity, that this is not greenwashing and that we actually get the right data on the table. And well, this is an area which is also rapidly expanding and growing in Europe after the implementation of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive and the European Deforestation Regulation. So these all drive more measured data. So we need to monitor and collect data and make these data openly available so that also this can be audited. So you cannot claim I'm doing a good thing. You have to prove it. Yeah. So, and that's a big thing which is coming up, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. The transparency and traceability of data will be.
All analysis should be reproducible and fair.
Yeah. And is that the service you provide for free to these companies?
Naturalis is an R&D. We do R&D. We're not for profit, but at this stage we get sometimes we pay personnel to develop some of these pipelines, which are related to the infrastructures which are underpinning BMD as well. So we have like a very large GIS infrastructure with all the drivers of change. So where's pollution, where's deforestation? Global Forest Watch is a very important one. What are the abiotic conditions under which species thrive and can exist? What's the impact of climate change? This is like a fully fair infrastructure, and this same infrastructure serves different purposes. Also the research department and Naturalis.
Yeah.
So this is, we're building this into our core infrastructure.
Yeah.
Is fair for you a condition needs, or the partners that work with you,
Yes.
do they fair access to all the
Yeah.
information?
Yeah, basically all data is open. We recognize that we also monitor sensitive species. You cannot disclose the exact location of sensitive species. We would not like to put that
Yeah.
in GBIF.
Yeah.
So we're looking into solutions to allow those data which are collected by site managers to their camera traps, to their audio mods, to their eDNA sampling, and add that in the workflow and not disclose it publicly at GBIF. But that's how all the other data should be fully open.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give the
Yeah,
mic to Fred, and then I want to ask the audience if
maybe
by
I
now
want
they
to-
do have a question.
you kind of answered my question already. So maybe Boris, you have a question because you haven't asked questions yet.
Well, considering the comments you said, I think you have the carbon market, and maybe in the future we can have the biodiversity market, even if we like it or not. Then you have a big amount of money that can be used to fund these nature conservation improvements, not in the world. That is a thing that I think is going to come. We never know, but this could be an opportunity to mobilize funds to these kind of solutions and to do better with nature.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a question in the audience in the meantime? Oh, yeah. So can you, Niels, throw the,
Oh, sorry.
Throw the
yeah, throw the microphone.
Thank you very much. It is great to hear all these lovely stories, and there's good initiatives. And I heard from Mr. Fred Stolle that there is successes to celebrate as well. I'm surprised to hear that you do not start with that. You only stress on what's going wrong. And in the whole setting, I think there's one or two stakeholders for me missing, and these are the politicians and the governments. In what way do you collaborate? Because according to me, you can only get your successes when you work together with all stakeholders.
Thank you. Good question.
Fully agree. And we work together with many governments. Some governments hate us, which is fine because that's the good thing of being an NGO. FAO cannot do that. They are a member organization of countries. We can criticize countries. We work like Indonesian governments. We've been there all the time, working very close together. You know, whenever I'm in a country from DRC, ROC, we work with the governments, and that goes well. And yes, you're right. You're trying to work together, but we also have a point to say, like, I'm fine if your definition of deforestation is that you have no deforestation. We think you still have deforestation. So it's a fine line we're working, and it depends every time when you talk, you know, politicians are 4 years, they're gone, and there's a new person, how you deal with that person, how you work with that. The Indonesian minister was there for 10 years, so we had a long-term relation, but now Indonesia has changed. They have similar government as the US or the Netherlands now, completely changed to a different way. Very little contact again, so you have to build up the relations. But I agree with you. It is local, but also local. Don't forget the local government. In Brazil, the states are very powerful. You don't have to go to the federal government. Sometimes the provincial government is good enough. They know how to happen. So fully agree. Why I didn't go with all the successes, I also feel we don't need to be complacent. If you see what happened, we're still having the biggest deforestation over the last 20 years. It's no time to be complacent.
So who are the bad guys, according to you?
Well, so Bolivia, 4 million hectares agriculture, big agriculture, the corn, you know, the soy that is exported to China, made in chicken and pork feeds and exported then to Europe. There was a little thing that EUDR was mentioned. That's a new EU law that after 2020, you cannot deforest for any commodity and import it into the EU. Very strong law. They're trying to kill it again last week in Parliament. But I think these kind of supply chain issues, because whatever we eat has an impact on the countries far away. Having that stronger and trying to fight for that, I think is one of our solutions, in my view.
Yeah,
Thank you. Just one general question. Are your NGOs or what you work for a member of IUCN? International Union for Conservation of Nature. Are you a member? Ah, one out of four.
No, I think I did.
Naturalis is an R&D institute.
Mhm.
Don't know
Yeah,
if you can be.
But
We are a very lean and mean organization. I would like to be a member, but it's $1,000 a year and I cannot afford.
Yeah.
So we are really shoestring funded, and we would love to be part of that, but we simply cannot afford.
I think Boris had a different view on the relation with politicians and government.
Yeah, we have some. We are working with them, so in a regional level and sometimes a national level, because these regions governments are in charge of environmental protection and conservation in natural thousand sites, protected areas, and national parks and habitats. The thing is, we are like trying to work with them in the best way, but you need to deal with the chain of command. So you need to go with the technical people is easier because they can understand better the solutions, their products, and we can understand them also their problems because they are dealing with the usual day problems like permits for changing the land cover or land use, or cutting a forest, or any type of things that they are asked to, okay, can I do this or not? So for this, they need this information, this habitat mapping and all of this information, and they're eager to have this most of that updated possible. But the thing is then going through the chief or of the area or the subdirector or director, mobilize the funds for doing this habitat mapping or monitoring species or monitoring habitats, or even trying to establish a way for monitoring the habitats and species. Niels talked about natural housing managers. Most of these areas, at least in Spain, don't have a manager, actual manager per area. You have a central unit trying to manage these places, most regarding these permits, so these laws to allow or not allowing things happen in these areas, and these areas are populated, so they are dealing with a lot of population, with nature. So they are struggling with this type of problems, and we're trying to solve these problems, but sometimes there is not enough funds to monitor, giving them data, to use them, and to answer the population, the citizens. And then you can have angry citizens regarding nature conservation. And this is something that happened. Also in this project that we were working in with other countries, Bulgaria, Romania, Spain, these field sites, we were looking at the funds that are distributed to nature conservation by the governments, and it's not so much like you can think. So it's depending on this type of mobilizing the funds, you can have more or less work, and this is important for us that we are living also in this type of works. And this is very relevant, no? In the type of funds and how to convince these directors of director, not the technical people that you can, the civil servants, convince it easier, but the ones who have to take decisions, we are going to prioritize this action or this other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to add a little bit there on the policy domain as well. So for biodiversity meets data, we recognize that the managers on the ground of the 27,000 Natura 2000 sites are essential. So they do the monitoring, but on top we have the different layers of policies, policymakers. So we recognize national reporting on the Natura 2000. So for the nature directive, so we have involvement there with DG Environment. I presented the project there as well. And we have the EEA, the European Environment Agency, in the advisory board of the project. And we have direct links at the top European level at that. So policy in BMD is fully integrated and also recognized as a stakeholder. And we're aiming to develop tools so that they can facilitate their reporting at national level, at European level, in collaboration and interaction with those policymakers. So again, we can think of interesting things, but that's maybe not the thing that they're looking for.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions in the audience? Martijn.
Yeah, I got a question for Niels. I was triggered by the fact that you mentioned the impact of biodiversity monitoring. We speak now from a policy perspective, but I'm just curious to learn how is the industry, so like the building sites and all the industry partners who definitely have an impact on this biodiversity. How are they involved in your project and how do you engage with them?
In this particular project, Biodiversity Meets Data has not direct involvement of the private sector. So, but also we're looking, of course, in where we can expand nature conservation, because indeed the 30-30 target and by 2030 was mentioned. So we're only covering 12 and 18% of the surface as it is right now. So that means that we have to start interacting with private owned land. And I think that's where the major wins are to be made, especially in agriculture. If we can do more regenerative agriculture and restore biodiversity values in those landscapes, that's probably where the easiest wins are to be made. So we are open for this discussion. We are also having these discussions within other projects, but this Biodiversity Meets Data is really now focusing on scaling up monitoring and mobilizing historical baseline data. So if you are aiming for restoration, that you actually can assess at which point you were successful, because we need this historical data to be mobilized as well.
Yeah, and you're focusing on Natura protected areas, but then later on the under the nature restoration law, of course, we do want to expand nature areas.
And probably these species which are on the annexes of the nature directives are also protected in those newly established areas. So.
And of course, we know that some species like bear and wolf do not hold themselves to protected areas alone.
Yep,
it's a major thing. Any more questions from the audience? Oh, you pointing at someone? Sorry, I'm not seeing it. Oh, yeah, okay.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to say. I know some of the people of ours. Can you say your name and organization when you ask a question?
Yep. Hello, I'm Kyle Jewell. I'm at the University of Trento and at the Inland University of Norway, and we're working on human-wildlife interactions and conflict. And my question for you was, how do you engage with local people? Until now, we've talked about, big organizations, big multinational companies and governments, but how does the data monitor the data? How do you engage with local people? Do you have any approaches to engage more directly with communities which are on the front line of nature conservation?
Yeah. So that local before you can get to global. Who is your question aimed at?
All of them.
All of them. Okay. Who wants to start?
Well, we have also some projects developing to nature conservation or nature restoration. And most of the land in our region or Spain is private land. So you want to make some restoration activity, you need to talk to the landowners and the farmers who can be there, or the people who are living there. So this is very relevant. Our approach in this type of projects is try to talk to them and familiarize with them, because if you want to make projects with them and try to induce them to preserve and conserve nature, you need to be like a friend with them. So you need to go to the bar, drink something, and then you can gain their confidence, and then you can work better with them. And this is something that we did in one project, LIFE project from European funds, to establish a scheme for result-based payments based on the conservation result that they are working, the farmers with cattle, cows and wild ponies that have in one land, to preserve peatlands and protected habitats at the end. So once they know you and once you have gained this confidence, you can work nice with them. You need to take account of them and consider them in any nature conservation. And we have also Eurosite here, and they have a lot of experience in this end, because they are landowners and they are promoting the nature conservation from these landowners. So this is a very important thing to do.
Yeah, we work with local organizations across the world, and those organizations are the relation that we have with local communities. So directly, we don't have them because we are a service provider, but they are critically important. The idea, which is still existing but really kind of fading, is that you protect nature by putting a fence around it and getting the people out and the animals in. That is, especially in Africa, that was an idea, but that is now fading and the fences are to drop down and areas become bigger. But it means that the animals can move further and can also sometimes get engaged in conflicts with people, but also that people are living in the areas and sharing the areas with local people. And then if you say to people, you cannot do this, you cannot do this because the animals have these and these rights, then things will not work. So it needs to be mutually beneficially. So there are lots of activities going on the ground that we support by helping them to conduct surveys and to show what kind of interactions the programs on the ground have with local communities, how they are engaged in transforming the way of living into a way of living that is less dependent on natural resources and that is more focused on sustainability and so on, but also creating job opportunities that are in balance with nature and so on. And those projects are really now getting a big grip, and there's hundreds of them developing all over the world. And they need the tools that we are developing, and also with Nature First has been developing, to show what they do and to prove that they are not only good for nature, but also for people, because people are part of nature. And that's where we have human-wildlife conflicts that we can see, can we work towards human-wildlife coexistence? And you can see in the Netherlands, there's lots of Dutch people here around. You can see how hard it is if there's just 100 wolves around, that people really have all kinds of responses to that. That they say, well, we should not really coexist. They should be there and we are here and there should be a fence in between. Well, that thinking actually in Africa has progressed much further than we in the Netherlands and maybe in bigger parts of Europe. They are way more aware that coexistence is vital, not only for nature, but also for themselves, for their own livelihoods, for their own sustainability, for their own fresh air, fresh drinking water, and so on. Resources that we need, but resources that we are now less framing as resources that you can consume, which are kind of endless, but resources that you have to foster and that you have to take care of and that takes care of you. And that relation is restoring slowly. And those stories and those trends need to be measured so that you are not just a storyteller, but that you can show that proof and how things really improve in time for people and nature. I've seen amazing results of almost deserted desert areas, which within 20 years were completely reforested, and there were elephants again, there were lions again, there's cheetah, but also the people are at a way higher level of economic sustainability, way of living, there's clean water, there's infrastructures. And those projects that I'm now talking about are funded by, actually by the polluters in this world. They pay a tax for polluting, but that money is fueled back. And that is a critical way of funding this. Yeah. And hopefully biodiversity credits and nature credits are something that, well, let's say the polluters should pay and then pay because it's not a free resource. The air is not just there all around us to be polluted because nobody cares. Yeah. It is something that we breathe and that we need to be very careful about. So yeah, community is essence of nature. And so I like your question. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Before I hand over to Fred, I want to say that I think a lot of our workshops will delve deeper into many of the topics that are being raised in this panel and through the questions. We have one from a person working locally in Tanzania, and then NGOs kind of flying in with their great ideas, and the project ends and they disappear, and what the consequences are to the long-term working together, to the communication and engagement, the human-wildlife conflict. How can you work and deal with that? Oh, another. Because there were two panel members. Are you happy to give up your? Because you wanted an answer from all panel members. But... Yeah, you've heard enough.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Lisbeth Vijkema. I'm from Ethics Institute of Utrecht University, and I'm chairwoman of Nova Atlantis, a dolphin research foundation based in the Netherlands, working in the Azores. I'm really interested in what Jan-Kees just mentioned about fruitful coexistence. I was wondering, could you mentioned a few examples, but could you distinguish ingredients of a pattern that would help to improve coexistence? What are the ingredients to make it work? And yeah, what is I'm really
like a rule
interested.
book or a recipe book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because this is where we have to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to have more information on that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank
maybe
you.
that's something
Thank
you
you.
should think about with some of the partners too. I don't know if it exists already. Could you give a couple?
Oh, of course, I'm not the guru here, but I see, of course, and we are supporting a lot of projects where I see good examples of how things work. But one of the things is that, and that's maybe why you see very good results in African countries, because wildlife is still in their memory. Sometimes it's already gone from the landscape, but it's often quite near. The wolf in the Netherlands has been gone for ages, and we didn't know anything about it anymore. There was no threat. If you know how to live with a threat, normally you defend yourself against it. If there's a burglar, then in the Netherlands we know how to protect our house. But now there's an animal trying to eat your chicken, and now we suddenly are helpless. And it's often not that difficult.
But so
putting up a
in the case of the wolf, so what would you recommend to us in the Netherlands how to deal with the wolf with African experience and knowledge?
Well, first of all, we have to explain to each other that the wolf is there, and he is there to stay because he is part of the Netherlands, and he has a right to be there. And so people should be, there should be an acceptance that it's there. Face it, he's not going away. And then next, how can you prevent problems? Well, there's lots of issues, there's lots of guidelines and ideas already about fences. And then people that don't want to put up a fence, their sheep will be killed. Well, next time, hopefully they put up a fence, because it's not that difficult. In African countries, they're using chili fences. That's the kind of, well, if you've got pepper in your nose, you start sneezing, and that's not a very nice experience. So there's lots of these also biological treatments and defense mechanisms that you can use depending on the species you try to keep out of your fields or from your kippen den and so on. So just think in a more natural way. It's a nature-based solution, in fact, to think about how can I kind of inrichten? How can you design your area, your landscape in such a way that there is a coexistence, that there is room for everything? But then, of course, there needs to be some fences and some, maybe put your sheep in the night inside rather than keep them outside.
No, Fred has also some.
Have a herding dog. And
that has also some thoughts on this. From personally, I would say, you said by design, and I think conservation by design should already anticipate the reaction of people. And I think that's often forgotten by conservationists because they're so driven to restore a certain species. And then because they're so begeistred by it, they forget that not everyone is going to be as happy as they are. So it needs to be incorporated for me from the beginning of your conservation effort. Fred.
2 words. One is like trade-offs. There are trade-offs. Like, yeah, you have to put up a fence. Someone has to pay for it. So yes, there are costs. We shouldn't just diminish it like, oh yeah, that's all cool. It's like, no, there are costs. There are trade-offs also in Africa. I mean, in Indonesia, when they see a snake in their house and they have children, of course it's chopped in two. It's dead. It's gone. Like, yeah. No. So obviously, and also don't subscribe to the noble savage idea that IPNLC, indigenous people and local community, only want love and peace and float in the forest. No, they also want the fridge and the motorbike. And so but they do care of their land. They do much better stewards. There is that tension. That's a tension we have to work with. We shouldn't put our head in the sand on that. There is development needed, but they have a very different way of looking at their forest. That's the tension. We shouldn't go one or the other. That is the messy ground we're working on, and there never will be a perfect solution. I'm not a millennial. I don't believe in vampires, and I don't believe in silver bullets.
Can I say something now about the wolf? Yeah, hi, Kim Hendricks, Wildlife Security Innovations. I'd quite like to say something about the wolf, if I may. The wolf is a very interesting question in the Netherlands. I think that in addition to fences, there are a lot of companies involved in different sorts of technologies for detection of wolves. My company is one of these companies. It's interesting you also raise the government, because I find the government in the Netherlands is almost completely inaccessible. You can't ring them up, you email them and you won't get a response. You simply cannot get in communication with the government if you try. You can't turn up at their doorstep. So, but came up and out of chance. The holiday home that I rented to stay in during this conference is owned by a company involved in wolf defense solutions, and his partner was attacked by and had 17 sheep killed about a month ago. And so it was a big coincidence. And so before I go home from this conference, I'll be putting one of my systems at his place to see what we can see. So I develop systems that do local AI and use thermal imaging technology to detect for rapid detection and response. So in addition to fencing, I would say extremely rapid detection with extremely rapid response. All the indications are that the wolves are very, very shy animals and don't like a lot of change. So that suggests that if you're fast enough, a lot of methods will help deter the wolf from attacking your particular sheep. So,
yeah, no, very good point. Thank you very much. I think you should go and talk to Jan-Kees, Niels, and also, I don't know if she's still in the room, Anna Davison. Yeah, oh, right behind you. Anna Davison from Wageningen University. And she has been part of our project developing a digital twin, which is exactly that, the rapid detection, the rapid alerting, so that you can respond much more fast than we are able to do at the moment. We are out of time because we have only a couple more minutes to go. So I wanted to draw this session to a close. I would say any final words. I'm worried you're going to overrun beforehand, but I can never pass the wise words from Gladys. We wrote down a couple takeaways that we wanted to give to you as the audience. And one is you have to invest in getting something used. So developing technology is only a first step along a long way. Because as Gladys so rightly says, if you cannot have the people coming along with you, moving with you, understanding you, benefiting from it, then your technology, you might as well shelve it straight away. From the start, therefore, you have to, I would say then not just keep your customer, and I say customer deliberately, because we often talk about user, and this is like, oh, you know, would you like to use this? Yes. But do you have money to pay for it? No. So I think we also need to go to a bit of a mindset where even the word free, it's not free. Someone has paid for developing it. So even if you are free to use it, someone else has worked on it and paid for it and probably will need to keep paying for it, as Fred has been pointing out. So think about the longer term, think about your customer and the longer term operational phase, not just the initial development funding phase. Impact, we didn't even touch on impact. How do you get impact? But it needs continuity. I think that's also been pointed out by the questions you raised. You can't just come in, start something, go away, and then expect everything to be solved. It is really a long-term trust, partnership, involvement activity. And you need to think about solving the problem of your users or your community, the boots on the ground as well, because they are really the ones that are doing the hard work. Yeah, and I think that's it for this panel discussion. So thank you very much to Niels, Fred, Jan-Kees, Boris, and all you for raising these amazing questions. We will now stop this panel discussion and we'll go to the Jungle Restaurant for the breakout workshops. As I said before, I think a lot of the topics addressed in the workshops are diving deeper into the issues you have been raising this morning. And I hope you have really fruitful discussions with each other. If you have not registered for a workshop through the pre-registration, then I'm sorry, you have to go home. No, kidding. You'll see that on the breakout rooms, there are sheets on the doors that says already the people who have listed there, and then with the number of people who have registered for each session. And you will see also the maximum capacity of this session, because some workshop hosts wanted a smaller, more kind of hands-on working session, whereas others said, well, I can accommodate like 50 people. So have a look at the workshops if your name is not anywhere on the list, and then see if you fit in the room, find the topic that you like, of course, and hopefully you have a great first round of workshops. Thank you very much.